All right, good afternoon, everyone. Let's give it a moment for everyone to arrive from the waiting room. Alrighty, how are y'all doing today? I know most of your videos are off, but feel free to use your emojis and or the chat box. Awesome, awesome. I'm seeing some thumbs up, some hands clapping. All right, so I hope you all are doing well, and I hope you're making sure to take care of yourself. I know 2020 has been quite a bit of a roller coaster ride, and this week has kind of been giving me a little bit of jitters and anxiety, but please do make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And if you ever need someone to talk to or ever need support, know that we're here for you. All right, so it's my honor to welcome you all to the Humanities and the Arts Career Panel. Sorry if I'm kind of slightly looking to the side because you're over here and like the screen is over here. But I'd like to introduce you to several guest San Jose State alumni who are coming back to our community virtually to be able to share their stories with you about, how they got to where they're at, about, their own major and career exploration, and information about their industries and advice for taking the next step to build on your career and your future. And so please join me in welcoming Carmen Kennedy, who is a freelance writer, she's waving her hand right now, and a storyteller at Apple. Our second alumni is Lloyd Alaban, who currently carries multiple roles and has recently transitioned to Newsbreak. But formerly and currently, he was a reporter at Metro Silicon Valley, as well as Milpitas Beat, and a content writer at Cognizant. Our third alumni is Crystal Cardenas, who is a talent and belonging coordinator at Box. And last but not least, you may be familiar with this person, but this is Dr. Sean Fletcher, who is our very own assistant professor of public relations and sports communication at SJSU. And so, yes, feel free to give me those clapping hand emojis, those thumb emojis. Thank you, everyone. So before we kick off the event, I have some housekeeping rules and, quick introductions and agenda to go over. Awesome, thank you, Steph. So some house rules. Number one is please do mute your mic because we do want to make sure that we are able to hear our alumni share their stories and wonderful words of advice. And jumping to bullet number 3, this meeting will be recorded, so that way it's made accessible to you later. So if your mic happens to be on, the recording will pick up on that. So please do keep that in mind. As for your videos, completely up to you. If you're comfortable having it on, please have it on, but if you're not, don't worry about turning it off. Something else to keep in mind is questions, because along the way, as you're listening to our alumni share the stories, if you're curious about something and you want to ask someone, a specific question, please go ahead and use our chat box and type your question there, because in the back end, we're going to be organizing your questions and then later asking them to our panelists towards the end of the event. So if you have questions, please enter them in the chat box. Okay, let's go ahead and hop over to the agenda. Thank you. So these first 5 minutes, it's me talking, introducing, but then we're going to hop into a 15-minute facilitated Q&A Q&A session. And so that's where we have pre-selected questions to help you get to know our alumni better about what they do, who they are. And then for the next 30 minutes after that, it's going to be audience Q&A. So that's where your questions come in. So please don't hesitate to type your questions in the chat box. We're going to wrap up with 5 minutes of resources and a survey, and then that will conclude our session together. All righty. So next slide, please. I have the honor of introducing you to the moderators, who will then introduce you to the alumni. So first is going to be Sandra De Leon, who is a career counselor at San Jose State, and she specializes in diversity and inclusion programming, as well as career readiness. She will be leading us on the facilitated Q&A portion. And later on, Jacqueline Vela, who will be joining us later, is a student coordinator at the H&A Student Success Center and also majoring in journalism at San Jose State. She will be leading us in the student Q&A portion. So you'll have a student perspective there. So without further ado, I'm going to virtually pass this mic over to Sandra to kick us off on our event. The floor is all yours, Sandra.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandy. And once again, welcome to all of you students. Thank you for attending today's event. I know sometimes it could be challenging attending these virtual events when a lot of our work is now being done virtually and with everything else going on. But thank you for making the time to be here with us and with our lovely panelists to will be sharing their career journey with us. So for our first question here for our facilitated Q&A session, this question we're going to have, if we can have all the panelists kind of answer this question. And our first question is just kind of an introduction of yourself, your name, your major, why you chose that major, as well as your job title and where you currently work, and just a brief description of what you do in your current position. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of go down the line here of who I see on my screen. So if I can have Carmen go first.
Hey, everybody. I'm Carmen. My last name's Kennedy. And I am a creative writing major, MFA program. And I'm just finishing up, or, kind of finished up. I got to pass my thesis on to a couple more folks. But for the most part, I've gotten feedback from it, and I got one foot out the door. I have had a long career, but it hasn't been consistent. So I think of it as, BC and after kids, right? So BC, back in BC, before kids, I was an artist. And my undergrad was I went to art school, right? So I got a BFA in advertising art. And I worked in Silicon Valley with that. And as computers came about, desktop computers, that is, that kind of dates me, right? I started training all the folks to whom that was something new. So what I was doing kind of segued from art specifically into art and teaching, or art and training. And then after, I'll give you the very short story of it. After kids and family and deciding that I needed to remake myself, I came back to school, and I thought, okay, another medium for a creative like myself would be writing. And so that's what I thought would be a good marriage of the artistic me, who was an undergrad at one time, to the artistic me who is a writer using a different medium now, and kind of combining the two to brand myself and make a career. So that's my kind of like major, why I chose it. It was intentional. It was all about creating a path for myself in terms of doing something that I really want to do and being able to make a little money off of it too, So in terms of a job title, Lloyd was talking a little bit earlier and said that he had recently changed positions or changed from one company to another. And I think that you'll find that that is not uncommon in humanities and arts and any of these majors that fall under that umbrella. I too have moved around a lot in Silicon Valley. And that's basically the new working paradigm. Folks don't stay in one place unless it's really doing them well. And to have the ability to move around also gives you a chance to grow in ways that you might not otherwise. So in terms of job title and company name, I'm just going to put it out there. I move around, just like you, Lloyd. My last gig was at Apple, but I've done really small gigs too, and it's all good. Oh, what do I do in my current position? Okay, write. So that's simple, Well, and writing comes in so many different forms. Again, I approach it as a creative. So we'll unpack this a little bit later, but writing is just not pen on paper or, to update it, you know, typing into your laptop. It's a lot of stuff.
Right, thank you, Carmen, for that introduction. And as Carmen mentioned, and maybe some of our other panelists today, but we do often see this of, going through career changes or transitions, and at times having to reinvent yourself. So thank you for sharing that. Next, I'll go over to Dr. Sean Fletcher.
Good afternoon. I'll take each of these. The easiest one first. My name is Sean Fletcher. My major, and this is almost 20 years ago, I actually teach in the department that I graduated from, which is public relations. And I had a focus. We didn't have minors back then. Back in the olden days, we had in our department we had focus areas. So marketing was my focus area, while PR was my major. And why I chose it is a couple of reasons. One is I like people most days, and it's a people business. PR is a people business. It's public relations, as you know. And there's a strategy around it, and I love strategy. I love, as any of my students will tell you, I love strategy. I love thinking beyond what we see and try to have a few steps ahead that allows for us to position ourselves for the best outcome. So I love that part about it. And when I started to learn that I could communicate and also have a applied job behind it that could be lucrative and open up some doors, that was the spot for me. Previously, I was somewhat interested as a student, more so in kind of sociology and some of the unapplied areas of communication. So when I learned about PR and that there was a business element to it, I went to it. My current job title is Assistant Professor of Public Relations, and I've recently added sport communication to that as well here at San Jose State. And there's quite a bit of a misnomer in terms of what a tenure track professor does. Teaching is but one of our job responsibilities. That's usually what our students see. Outside of those who participate in research with us, the majority of what students see from us is our teaching. However, research and scholarly activity is a part of my responsibility, along with staying active in my industry. So I sit on the board for the Public Relations Society of America, Silicon Valley. I also do quite a bit in terms of sort of activist types of work. So I have opportunities to speak in the media and some of our news networks here locally and abroad more recently, to where I'm able to talk a lot about the work that I'm doing here on campus from a social injustice, social diversity and inclusion standpoint, but also I get to kind of dabble in sport, which I love as well. That's also a part of the job. That's a cool part about being a tenure track professor, is that we get to exercise some of that love that we have and speak out on certain issues that we may not be able to talk about in the classroom because of our teaching mandate. So there's quite a bit that I'm able to do in this role as a tenure track professor.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Sean Fletcher. And I think it was interesting for you to share also kind of the perspective of the faculty experience, how it's not just being in the classroom, but, also research, as well as, maybe being an activist and in the community. So I think that's important for students to also kind of be aware of. And also kind of what you mentioned of finding a career that it sounded to me like aligned with your skills and your interests, right, of working with people, but also kind of that business side and whatnot. So thank you for sharing. I'll move on here to Crystal.
Thanks, Sandra. Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal Cardenas, and I graduated in 2018. I had two majors. I majored in Spanish and global studies. To be honest, I don't know initially why I chose those. I didn't have any plans to go to college when I was graduating high school. It just wasn't a conversation that my family had. No one in my family has pursued higher education. I come from a family of immigrants from Mexico, and not anyone in my family really had money to go to college, so it was not in my mind to go. So when I finally got into San Jose State, I was exploring some majors, figuring out my way around campus and just how to do this thing called college. And I met some really nice people through the Spanish department and reconnected with one of my high school teachers, and she encouraged me to major in Spanish. And so I thought I might also major in global studies because I thought it was interesting to learn about other cultures. So that's kind of where the decision to major in those two came from. It was a lot through exploration. Currently, I'm working at Box, and the job title that I have is called the Talent and Belonging Coordinator. And that role really encompasses a lot of different things that I do. So the team at my company essentially touches a lot of community work, so nonprofit driven work. We have organizational development work that we do and talent development work. And so I essentially support all parts of that, of my main team. And I really love doing it because one, it combines a lot of the writing skills that I was able to learn at San Jose State, the people skills, and also my passion for nonprofit work that I get to do through my team as well. In fact, outside of work, I do a lot of nonprofit work. There's an organization called Braven that partners with San Jose State, and I coach students through it. So there's something that I do on the side. And what do I do? Oh, what I do? Okay. Well, I kind of already mentioned what I do, but I guess I'll mention one of the main things that I drive through my role is I direct a lot of the leadership development for my company. So anything that touches entry level folks that just graduated from college or seasoned executives. So I advise on the type of content that we're going to teach them, how we will teach them, and who will teach them the content. So that's a little bit about what I do, but I'm sure we'll share a little bit more later on.
Thank you, Crystal, and great to hear. I'm sure some students could probably resonate with this, which I did myself, of, trying to figure out what you want to major in is definitely an exploration process, and kind of sharing a bit about what you do and the skills that you get to utilize in your role. We'll move on here, last but not least, to Lloyd.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Lloyd, and I graduated in 2018 with my MS in Mass Communications at San Jose State, where Dr. Fletcher actually spoke in one of my classes. So, yeah, and I graduated with my BA at UC Santa Cruz in sociology. And why I chose it, I knew since I guess maybe I was in middle school or so that I was really into writing, and I was like really into just random facts like trivia and all that. And the funny thing is that once I got to UC Santa Cruz, they cut the journalism program about a year before I got in, and I did get to be involved in student media there. I majored in sociology because I was really interested in how people behave and how people behave in groups, and then worked for a couple of years and then decided I wanted to go back to school. In a previous life, I was in education. I actually entered San Jose State in the education program, the master's education program. And then when I was doing my intern hours, I realized that I didn't want to work with kids for the rest of my life. So, and I wanted to go back to my first passion, which was writing. So transferred over to the journalism department in San Jose State. And yeah, I got to do a lot of cool things there, meet a lot of cool professors and network. Job title. Right now, I'm a freelance writer. I've written for SF Gate, the Metro, Silicon Valley, San Jose Inside, and right now I'm writing for a news app called Newsbreak, and as well as my hometown paper, the Milpitas Beat in Milpitas. And then, so yeah, we've been doing a lot of election coverage this week, and a lot of tweeting and live blogging. So yeah, I enjoy it. I cover mostly local politics and news. So anything going on at San Jose City Hall, I'll cover Milpitas City Hall, anything in the South Bay that has to do with politics or local news is what I cover. And what do I do? Yeah, what I do, I write articles. I'm in print journalism, and starting to get into data journalism because that's the next big thing in the journalism industry. So yeah, doing all that. So yeah, and I'm sure we'll get to more into it later. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Lloyd, for that. Nice to see the different ways you're using your writing skills through newspaper articles or Twitter and kind of your focus of politics there. Thank you all for sharing. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. And just for our audience, just to let you all know, I'll kind of move through these questions, the following questions a bit more quickly. And for sake of time, we'll have certain panelists answer these questions based on their indicated previous preferences. So I'll move on to question number 2 here. So for question number 2, I'll have Sean answer this question first, which is, how did you find your current job and how would you recommend job searching during this time?
That's a loaded question. You would almost guess that I didn't look at it beforehand, but I did. In this particular role, I was actually at Apple prior to coming to San Jose State. However, just to kind of talk a little bit about preparation, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later, I had taught as an adjunct, and if you don't know, it's basically a part-time instructor on a college campus for about 12 years before even coming back out to California when I was living in the DC area. So I stayed in the classroom, although it was not full time. So teaching has always been my first love. I just wanted to primarily execute my strategy of getting some actual field experience so I can not just talk about it, I can talk about it from a standpoint that I did it, that I did the work. I worked in the industry for some pretty rigorous, successful companies. And now I can bring that expertise and that experience into the classroom. So that had been my strategy for a very, very long time. And I started to move sort of towards the apex of my career to where I had to make a decision. I had to decide if I wanted to stay on the track of the corporate world, of moving up the ranks. I had started to move into managers and managers of myself and now managers of leading people. And once you start to move into that area, now you need to make a choice because you have to go all in, or you have to decide that this isn't for you because it's a major, major commitment. So I got to that point to where I had to have a conversation with myself and my family and say, okay, well, it's now the time to try and move into teaching. And one of my mentors back when I was on campus, Bob Rucker, just kind of serendipitously said, hey, listen, there's a role that's coming available in PR. Have you thought about it? And it just happened to catch me at the right time. And I decided to take advantage of that opportunity and jump from Apple over to San Jose State. And there's a long, windy road as to how I even got to that point, but I'll talk about that later for the sake of time for everyone else. But I would recommend job searching in this time, just as I would prior to COVID. Be as aggressive and as innovative as you possibly can be. This isn't the time to be shy. This isn't the time to be bashful about reaching out and networking. There's a tremendous amount of digital sites that allow you to do that, not just LinkedIn, by the way. There are a tremendous amount of professional sites that allow for you to brand yourself to where now you can position yourself for the jobs that you want. Because I can attest to this, and many on the panel I'm sure would say the same thing, is that when you are going through a job hiring or internship hiring process, they look at everything. We look at your social media sites. We look at absolutely LinkedIn, that's a no-brainer. But what are they going to see when they look at your sites? Are they going to see a bunch of dance videos? Are they going to see you representing yourself how you want to be seen professionally? That starts now. So I would suggest that you build your brand right now, and then you'll just continue to tweak it. You'll continue to build it. And now when potential employers start to research you and you reach out to them, if you reach out to someone on LinkedIn and you all of a sudden see that somebody anonymous looked at your profile, guess who that probably was? It was probably that person. What are they going to see? All right. So that's where I would suggest, in this time of us being sort of relegated to the digital space, you can't really do informational interviews face to face like you really want to. Like, I would suggest, quite honestly, asking for things to do for free, even, because we love free support that could then give you an opportunity to show what you can do. All right. So do not let the first time you reach out to somebody be asking for a job. Work backwards, give yourself time. And then when you need the job, you have already put in the work. So there's a whole lot more into it, but I've taken enough time.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. Some great tips on, for our students to make sure that they, brand themselves, identify what their brand is. And then also I heard the importance of networking, using LinkedIn or your own social network that can help in your job search. Crystal, would you like to add anything else to this question?
I could add a little bit more. Sean, I thought that was great. The branding piece was definitely one that was top of mind when I first saw this question, and how important it is to refine your brand, whatever it is, and whatever that is and what it means for you as a student now, because employers will look at that like crazy. The recruiters will look at that. They will know your brand by what you put online. So keep that top of mind. The other thing that I would suggest is if you are looking for jobs, I would really encourage you to treat it like a project. So it's not like oh, well, if I see a job, I'll apply to it. I would take it really seriously and create a project plan that specifically shows you what company, what role, what skills you need to have, when you apply to it, when they reached out to you, and track it. And that way you can measure like where you're succeeding, or maybe where you probably need to lean in a little bit more. So that's another thing I would suggest. One other thing that I wish I would have done when I was in school was make a list of everything that I'm really, really good at. So you might be thinking like, well, what am I good at? I'm a student right now. I hear it all the time from the students that I coach, but y'all are really smart. You have a lot of great things that you offer to the world, and the world just needs to see how awesome and badass you are. So I would suggest you make a list of everything you're really, really good at, whether that's writing or video editing or whatever it might be. Just keep a running list that you continuously add things onto, so that when you do have those coffee chats or when you do have that interview, you can speak to all the awesomeness that you are. So I would just wanted to add that piece to it too.
Forgot to unmute myself. Great advice, Crystal, and something that we also as career counselors encourage students to do. Identify what your strengths are, right? And if you're having a hard time doing that, maybe sometimes even asking peers or other family members, people that know you well, what am I good at? And definitely making sure that you showcase those skills in your resume during the interview, and so on. All right, I'll go ahead and move on to the next question here. So for question number 3, the question is, what can our students do to help them stand out from the competition? And for this question, I'm going to go to Lloyd first.
Oh, sorry, forgot I was muted. So yeah, things like, I guess they're basic things like keeping your resume up, keeping your LinkedIn updated. I know at least in my industry, like people will ask for a portfolio, and for journalists, like there's a really good website called Muckrack where everything that you have ever published gets populated, and you can show them this one link, and yeah, that really helps because everything's right there. I know the Professor Fletcher talked about uh, not taking like any, or not being, basically not being below any job. When I started out, I took on pretty much any internship I could find, whether it was paid, uh, unpaid. My last internship before I got this job, I was like by far like the oldest person there. Um, but experience, you got to start somewhere, right? So, and yeah, that that experience was really fun. I got to write about real estate, which is something that uh, I'd never learned before, and that was something that I could tack on to my skills and my resume. Another thing is in journalism, when I started out, I did a lot of cold calling. So I literally just picked up the phone and Googled um, who were the editors of the papers I followed, the Mercury, the Chronicle, wherever, and basically asked them, well, what does it take to either, if they had any positions first off, and if they didn't, which most of them didn't, what are the skills that they're looking for? And I think when going off what the professor said, this isn't a time to be bashful about your skills because you have those skills. I think it's a perfect time to reach out and just reach out and see what skills are needed out there because you might already have those skills. So, yeah.
Thank you, Lloyd, for sharing your insights for that question. I'm going to move on to Carmen here, if you would like to add any other specific tips regarding how students can stand out.
Yeah, thanks for everybody's input. I'm learning stuff too. And that's kind of like the whole beauty of this gathering is that we often, as professionals and as students, don't get to gather and talk about the things that we're doing so much. We're either in class or we're talking about something that's work related. But it's kind of really nice to have this space to talk about ourselves and tips, share tips and best practices and all that good stuff. So just riffing off of what everybody's saying, brand, I heard that word come up. Brand is very important. And I hope everybody knows what that means, because I did hear you say social media, make sure you're not dancing and you're on your Instagram or whatever, if you're trying to be, rocket scientist. But I also heard portfolio too. I mentioned portfolio. So if you are maybe one of Lauren Welch's folks and your major is music and dance, then most definitely you want to have that, dancing on your social media, but you want to curate it. And I think that's kind of like the secret sauce of branding. You can show yourself, you can be your authentic self. You can show the fun times on your social media, but you want to curate it because you want what's posted to best tell a story. And again, one of my titles that I attach to myself is storytelling. You want to tell a story of you to whoever's looking. And trust me, people will be looking. My mother once told me, everybody's looking at you. Well, it's even more so in the day and age of social media, internet. So, enough said regarding that. Branding is a conscious effort. It's something that you're constantly working at. It's something you're constantly curating. And yeah, everybody that mentioned it, you hit the nail on the head. In terms of skills and resume, within the different disciplines underneath the umbrella of humanity and arts, you will approach your resume creation, your resume, the way it looks, what it tells, very differently. So as a creative, my resume is going to look different from somebody that's over in STEM. It's probably going to look a little bit different from Lloyd's resume. Same goes with my portfolio too. Maybe Crystal and Sean can talk to this later, but the thing that I have in my portfolio is the marriage of, you know, my early art beginnings and my writing. So, you know, I've got illustrated pieces in there. And when I say illustrated, it could be with photography, it could be with graphics, it could be with typography, you know, you name it. But I think it circles back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of writing is not just writing. It encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses research. It encompasses visuals. It encompasses ways of best telling or ways of best communicating whatever it is you're trying to communicate. Whether it's going to be storytelling or whether you're trying to convert somebody through advertising or whether you're trying to tell a story in terms of what Lloyd or what Dr. Fletcher does with journalism or comms. So yeah, it is, from the way that I view it, multidisciplinary. And the folks who approach it very narrowly do not take advantage of you know, the talent that they can leverage, the advantage that they can take within that field. If you're trying to label yourself as a writer, in other words. Yeah, and it's particularly as a creator. LinkedIn, I think Crystal she's got her game on because she hit me up before this event, and I'm like, all right, yes, let's talk. And Dr. Fletcher was talking about how, yeah, you talk to folks first, you don't hit them up for a job first, you create the relationship. It's all about relationships. We're in school to create relationships. And then at work, we should think of our work interactions as relationships. And you never know where those might go. So yeah, when you do show up with your hat in your hands, you know, looking for either an opportunity, a job, a lead, or whatever, you already have that relationship at least started. Yeah, there you go. Oh, shut up. Go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you, Carmen, for sharing. I think those are some great tips in terms of also, you know, making sure that what kind of stood out to me when you mentioned is making sure that students' brand is curated, right? And that it's that you're telling a story, whether it's through your LinkedIn, your resume, through your portfolio, the different ways you're branding yourself, and kind of thinking like, what do you want employers to remember about you, or recruiters, right? So thank you for sharing. Dr. Sean Fletcher, is there anything else that maybe wasn't mentioned that you would like to add to this question?
No, really the biggest thing that I saw in my career when I would go and talk with different groups, or I would mentor, or even now when I have a number of guest speakers who will come into my class, the number one thing that they say that they're usually disappointed in is afterwards is when they hand out their information, no one follows up. And they are waiting on students to follow up. And the ones that do, actually, I had a guest speaker from the Minnesota Vikings last semester come in, and it was in my sport class. And they loved it, loved it. And one student followed up with him afterwards. He gave the information, all of that, and they created a connection. They talk to this day. And that is a major coup to get into a professional industry where there's one of 32 jobs like his in the world. And the biggest thing that I would say, that's why I mentioned earlier about don't be bashful. You really have nothing to lose reaching out in a professional manner to some of the folks that, as Crystal mentioned, that you need to identify first. Identify, have a plan as to who these people are. LinkedIn is a gold mine, but it's not just that. There are other sites as well. And Anita mentioned, thank you in the chat, Handshake in terms of internships and things like that. But understand, every business at its core is a people business. And it's still about forging relationships. It's still about being able to express and articulate the value that you bring to a certain organization. There's no substitute for that. And when you remove that portion of it, that human connection portion of it, you become words on a screen like everybody else. You become a resume in the hopper. You become a list of qualifications that are just like everybody else. But it's those people who reach out and put themselves out there to be able to have a Zoom one-on-one, or to be able to, when we lift this COVID-19 restriction, be able to ask for a cup of coffee. You buy the cup of coffee. Don't ask them to. You buy a cup of coffee, have a conversation. That changed my career. Many times, changed my career, and it's changed many of my students' career who have taken me up on that admonishment and that challenge, is to step outside of your comfort zone and have a conversation with somebody, because professionals are saying students never follow up, and I want them to. Be that person who follows up. You stand out.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Sean Fletcher. Definitely, we hear again the importance of networking and following up with professionals to build that relationship. I'm going to move along here to question number 4. So for question number 4, I am going to have first here, let me see, Lloyd answer this question, which is, what are the best ways for students to network in your field? Examples could be professional associations, meetups, conferences. Maybe you can share some of the ways either you networked or that you would advise students to go about.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I've networked. I'm a member of a few journalism organizations. One of the ones that I'm most active in is the Asian American Journalists Association. So they provide everything from networking to job opportunities to they have a yearly conference, and conferences like are a huge thing. Like I remember when they gave me the opportunity to go to one of their conferences, it was really like a gold mine of people who had experience, people who were just like me, who were just starting out, and I think that was really useful because it gave me a blueprint to if I wanted to become an editor in at a daily newspaper, I could see where and how I could do it. I know that I needed to get there and make business cards, get some handshakes. I mean, yeah, like literally get out there in the field and talk to these people. And the thing about journalism is it's a really small world. Like I know pretty much all the reporters um, that are here in the South Bay. We see each other like pretty much all the, well, not right now, but when we go to press conferences before COVID, we always see each other, and we know who works where and who covers what. And I think that's pretty valuable because I've seen reporters in this region, they jump from one small paper to another, and it's because they've made those connections, whether it be like a 2 or 3 minute chat before a press conference, or sharing notes, or you know, just getting to know the person next to you, the reporter next to you at a press conference, and that can, open the doors to another opportunity. And yeah, just networking it. And I think I mentioned a few minutes before, cold calling, and just literally picking up the phone and looking for an editor, or a reporter to figure out what how they do things and what they report on, and figure out if that's what you want to report on as well. So yeah, lots of things. Yeah.
Thank you, Lloyd. Definitely, I agree with, students attending events where they get the opportunity to network with professionals in their field is a great way to, build those connections. And as you mentioned, sometimes some of these industries could be quite small, and, people know each other, and that's a great way to, follow up into other introductions as well and get to meet other folks. Carmen, would you like to add anything else to this question?
Sure. I'm going to speak to all the introverts in here, because there is such thing as networking for introverts. I never did really like the large networking environments. And I think very seldom does anybody just break down and say, I know that's I know that's the trend, and that's what, we're being taught to do, but I just really don't feel comfortable doing that, So I'm going to say it for us introverts. I don't really like doing that. And yet, I do not want to discount the importance of teaching yourself to present yourself to others, okay? So where I say I'm an introvert, that means that I usually come home and I, regroup, and I get my energy from home. I don't get my energy in big groups. As a matter of fact, in big groups, I'm usually expending my energy, right? And I need to come back and recharge in a quiet place. But I have trained myself to, speak in front of large groups. I've trained myself to make small talk, to put myself out there, to give my elevator pitch. Something that didn't come up, but if you don't know what an elevator pitch is, it's talking about yourself very quickly to somebody within, a short period of time, perhaps the time that you would spend on an elevator getting on and off, telling that person what you do, perhaps what your background is, perhaps what you're looking for. So yeah, all of these things are really good skills to develop, and you'll have to decide perhaps what's the best way to go about it. I took theater back in the day, and that kind of helped me develop some of those skills. I also just knew the usefulness of having those skills. Some people do speech and debate, Toastmasters, you name it. But I think it's very important. You're going to have to find out what works best for you. I also cannot discount the importance of leveraging or working your social media. And this is great for introverts because you can be in so many places at once. You can develop what you want to say. Sometimes I get my words jumbled up. The perfect platform for curating, again, what you want to say, what you want to put out there, the conversations you want to have, is through either email or social media. And so it's very careful. I mean, it's very important that we're careful about how you come across. And as a writer, this is ever so much more important, right? How you come across in your writing, in your emails to somebody, in your posts that you create. Because the tone will set your brand as well. Let's see, last but not least, I would say that if you do enough of this over time and you're patient with yourself, it's possible to get to the point where you can do passive job searches. People will start to come to you. And because I've been plugging away at this for so long, I'm fortunately at that point where with keywords, with what I have out there, with what I have in my portfolio, with the different places that I've posted my skills or my work, I can have folks coming to me and say, hey, we got this opportunity. I know that takes time. I know that that's not something that happens overnight, but if that's the place where you would like to be at one point, then definitely it's possible to work towards something like that. So we all have our different personalities. We all have our different work styles. Find yours, embrace it. Don't be hard on yourself if you're not, belle of the ball at first. But find your groove, find your niche, perfect it. And I think that's the place where you will thrive. That's the place where you will bloom. That's the place where you will come across as your most authentic self.
Thank you, Carmen. Definitely agree with, the importance of kind of putting yourself out there and practicing networking skills. And I think, it seems many in the chat resonated with, being introverts. And I myself am an introvert as well. And so, thank you for sharing that. I think for those of us that are introverts, I think it's important to remember that just because we're introverts doesn't mean that we can't socialize well or that we can't develop those social skills. But part of it, as you mentioned, Carmen, is kind of, doing that through classes or presentations and just getting comfortable going to meetups and talking to people. So thank you for sharing. So I
something else with that too. I just want to note that there's some folks in the audience and I want to give them kudos, shout out. They have popped in on the club that I founded at San Jose State. So clubs and a lot of these things that are happening right there on campus. Crystal mentioned Braven. I mean, these are great avenues for just getting to meet people. I mean, you don't have to have intense conversations with them, but just by showing up in whatever way you do, and I do see some of the faces out there, Martin and some other folks too, people get to know you. So, it's kind of a quiet way of creating this thing that we call either networking or presence, giving yourself the chance to create visibility, etc.
Thank you. So we are actually kind of short here on time in terms of our facilitated Q&A session. I know we're at 4:25 and kind of didn't get to all our questions. What I'm going to do is probably for question 5 and 6, just call on one panelist to kind of answer each of those questions. So then we could move on to our student Q&A session. Probably won't get to question number 7, but I do want to allow for that student Q&A piece. And if we don't have a lot of student questions, maybe we can come back to some of these. So for question number 5, I'm going to go to Crystal for this question. How has the pandemic affected your work? And how are you managing, and what is your advice for students?
All right, so this is a loaded question. my work was very much in person. The company that I work at had to really transition from being so in-person focused to being more hybrid and eventually virtual entirely. So I mentioned earlier, I think I mentioned that I help consult and direct a lot of the programs that we develop for executives, incoming leaders, managers, and so forth. So all of that had to be moved into this virtual space that people anywhere could access at any time. And I've developed content for people in Japan, in all across Europe, Australia, Canada, all over the world. So I really had to think smart about what do people need, when do they need it, and how can they access it? And that really helped navigate how I was going to do my work. And so being in the position that I was able to access resources to get a new product to help navigate this new virtual world. And so I kind of played the role of a product manager for the first 5 months of the pandemic and consulted and implemented a new product into my workflow to administer a lot of what we were doing in person. And what we use is if you decide to go into talent development type work or organizational development work, you'll hear about something called a learning management system. And I think SJSU uses one. I think Canvas might be one. So you'll basically live inside a system like that. And so I essentially run that for the entire company. And I would say it was really hard the first time or the first month. It was really, really hard because people were not used to this. I mean, who can be used to this? This is all really new, really complicated. There's so many different things that are affecting our communities. It's a really stressful time. So I had to transition a lot of our products into virtual way of accessing them, but also a lot of the management style changed with this transition to the virtual world, where I had to manage up a lot. And what I mean by that is when there was a lack of direction, or maybe someone's freaking out, like, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out, what am I gonna do? And I noticed that, and as an introvert, I'm observing a lot of the time. And I noticed there was times where I'm like, all right, y'all can't make a decision right now. I'm gonna make a decision for us. This is what we're gonna do. This is when we need to do it by. And that helped lead my team in different situations to a more successful outcome. But it was really challenging at first. I definitely had to reach out to mentors of mine to help me know how to say this in the correct way. Just, to be respectful of my colleagues and to make sure that, we have the business interest in mind, but also the people in mind. So that's how it affected my work. And right now as students, honestly, I can't even imagine like how challenging it must be. I have younger siblings who are in college now, and I'm doing my best to coach them and be there for them. I also, like I mentioned earlier, I coach students from San Jose State through Braven. And one of the things that I've noticed has helped well for them and that we've had discussions about are two things: setting boundaries and knowing how to negotiate. Those two things have been the two things that I've noticed really pull my students through these past, however many months we've been in this situation. And what those two mean is boundaries, setting boundaries on your time. How much time are you spending studying? How much time are you spending with your family? How much time are you spending alone in silence? That one is super important. So defining the boundaries that work best for you and the environment that you're in. And second of all, negotiating. I know a lot of people kind of get nervous when they hear negotiating, or maybe they don't know exactly what that means in the context of their situation. But negotiating can mean so many things. It could be negotiating with, like, if you're working, you can negotiate either for higher pay or for development opportunities. Just because we're in a pandemic does not mean that your employer doesn't have to invest in you. They should always be investing in you. So you can negotiate for development opportunities in work, but even outside of work, negotiation works well with your friendships, your family, if you have a significant other, learning how to negotiate on the things that you need at that given moment, or what next step you want to take, has worked really well for the students that I've been coaching, and my siblings as well. And I think right now, being in college is the perfect time to refine your negotiation skills in the context of your personal life, your professional life, refine your boundaries right now in college. Because let me tell you this, when you start working, there are some employers who will want you to work 24/7. Well, when you interview, you want to make sure that you avoid those, but learn how to set up those boundaries so that you have time to take care of yourself. Because if you can't take care of yourself, you're not going to show up as your best self. And you want to take care of yourself first before you can be there for someone else.
Awesome. Thank you, Crystal. Some great advice to our students about setting boundaries as well as negotiating. For the last question for our panel here, question number 6. I'm going to ask if Dr. Sean Fletcher could answer this question. What were some of the challenges you had to overcome as you pursued your education and or career? How did you overcome them?
Speaking of loaded questions, I would say some challenges that I faced as I pursued education and also my career was one from sort of an intra-personal standpoint, dealing with imposter syndrome for me. I didn't feel like I belonged. I was a student athlete at San Jose State. I played football. I was in the football culture, even though, I was very much so attuned with my academic pursuits. However, I didn't feel that I could compete with those who dedicated 100% of their academic tenure to that. I felt as though I split my time. I felt, for the most part, I felt as though I identified more as a athlete student as opposed to a student athlete. So I left San Jose State feeling as though I didn't really know where my place was now that I was focusing on competing in a world predominantly academic. So I had to deal with the self-work and the personal work of I can compete. I do belong out there. I do belong. I can compete with the Stanford graduates. I can compete with the Santa Clara graduates. I can compete across the board because I'm me. And because I do have a certain unique skill set that others don't, I need to cultivate that. And I need to now move forward and augment and enhance it. And once I realized that portion of it, I dealt with the imposter syndrome. I continued to deal with it, but it subsided. It lessened. It didn't bring me anxiety. Speaking of introversion, my MBTI is an introversion preference. I just realized that, you know what? I'm not going to be limited by it because introversion is no more of a deficiency as extroversion is an advantage. It's not. However you position yourself is what's going to allow you to move forward in the most productive way. I've seen many extroverts who did not position themselves to take advantage of that personality trait. And I've seen many introverts like myself who realized that, you know what, there's some self-care that needs to take place. When I finish this, or when I finish media interviews, or I finish keynotes, I turn off the light and sometimes I'll sit in a dark room to decompress because I'm an introvert. But I know that my goals require some, at minimum, ambivert traits, and at max, some extrovert traits. And I will slide to that side of the personality continuum, and I move forward. But I realize, and that's part of MBTI, and that's part of knowing yourself and assessing yourself, like I did when I exited San Jose State and with a 2.3 GPA, and realized that I could not get a job. I could not get into graduate school. I ultimately, true story, I got admitted to the University of Central Florida, to their Nicholson School of Communication. I got admitted on a provisional basis, which meant you can come down here and prove yourself and we may admit you. So I packed up my car and drove clear across the country down to Orlando, Florida, and I worked my tail off. And I was not admitted into that program until the semester I graduated. I did not fully get in it. You're admitted to this program, Sean Fletcher, until the semester I graduated, because I bet on myself. And there were times, speaking of introversion, that the question would come to me in a class of people that I didn't feel worthy of being within, and I would forget what the question was because I was terrified. And I would get I would get that a lot because I was an introvert, but I also was dealing with some imposter syndrome feelings. So challenges are not just external, they're also internal as well, and they start internally. And once I realized that, you know what, I can compete, I just have to give that same effort that I gave on the football field. I need to give that to this area that I'm pursuing. I realized that and I excelled and I graduated with a 3.9 and then decided, you know what, I feel really good about this. Let me go get this PhD since I'm really feeling good. And I went and got a PhD. And those are the things that more so than any external factors of challenges that you deal with, that you move forward in your career, you have to deal with the internal barriers that tell you that you're not qualified or you're not prepared to compete. Those same people that I was comparing myself to coming from San Jose State as a junior college, community college transfer that I could not compete with, those were the same people who were on my team that I was managing at places like Apple, Stanford graduates, Santa Clara graduates. Because once you realize that you compete, and oh, by the way, fun fact, San Jose State University is the most represented university at Apple, one of the most profitable companies in the world, San Jose State University. So from that standpoint, once you understand just how powerful you are and you've equipped yourself to go and compete with the best, the external factors, they tend to diminish. So I had to deal with the internal barriers. And once I dealt with those, the external barriers seemed so minimal. They were just now a matter of me setting my strategy in motion, and I went and got them. And I'm doing a lot of the things that I never foresaw myself doing when I was an early 20-something leaving San Jose State University, unsure of what I was going to do next. So a long-winded way of answering the question, but I get carried away when I start talking about how I got to where I am.
Thank you, Dr. Sean Fletcher, just for sharing your story. Very inspirational and powerful for our students, as I'm sure many of us, can just resonate with the fact of having challenges along the way, but not letting those define us and kind of moving forward. I will now kind of move over to the student Q&A piece, just given time. So I'm gonna pass it on to the next moderator here and see if we have any student questions that came in.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Vela. I am a third year at San Jose State, and I will be coordinating or facilitating this student Q&A section. I am a student coordinator for the H&A department. So it's really great to see all of you. Thank you so much to all of the panelists and all of your amazing answers and responses so far. We greatly appreciate you all being here. That being said, I'll go ahead and start with the first question. This one's just general, so whoever feels like taking it, you can just jump right in or, however you feel. But the first question is, how would you recommend that students in their first or second year seek out relevant opportunities for volunteering or internships? And like I said, anyone could go ahead and take this if they feel confident in answering it.
So the first or second year, you said?
Yes, for first or second year students.
Yeah, that's a tough year, right? First and second year, because you're just trying to get your mojo going in college, especially if you're just coming, if you're not familiar with the college environment, like if you didn't go to a junior college first. Those are some really tough years to kind of jump in. You're getting acclimated. if you're living on campus, and you probably are if you're a first year, right? Maybe to being away from home for the first time, perhaps. So my advice would be to kind of like, first of all, give yourself a break. Second of all, find the folks that you feel at home with, because you're leaving one home, creating another one within the school environment that first year, and perhaps the second year too. Trying to get your mojo with the enormous load of work that comes at you in institution of higher learning, which is probably very different from what was happening either in high school or maybe even at the junior college level, depending on your experience. And just, like I said, make home first before you go for the academic stuff, because a lot of what you're doing at that point too is finding yourself. So I think a lot of the Latinx, Chicanx Student Success Center is a partner on this endeavor, this panel that we've created here. So if that group is the group that's, you know, your home base, then yeah, make the connections, find home there. If the Black Student Success Center is where you're going to find home, so be it. If some of the clubs that offer activities in your wheelhouse, in the place where you feel comfortable, whether it's, you know, writing, or whether it's art, creation of art, and you name it, music, then find those families, get comfortable first, get your mojo going, and then jump into the career stuff. Right? Because again, I'm going to circle back to what was mentioned earlier, and that is building relationships. If you feel comfortable, you will build the relationships, and you'll be a whole lot better at it.
Awesome. Thank you much. Thank you so much for that advice. And I think a lot of us can agree. Those first couple of years are really building blocks, I feel like, for your upper division and just getting to know yourself and finding who you are. So thank you for that. Moving on to the next question. It is general again, but I guess we can go ahead and start with Crystal if she would take this one. So the question is, do you have any recommendations or resources for elaborating on personal branding?
I have a blog, so shameless plug. You can go check out my blog. If you go on my LinkedIn, it's called The Profesh Girl. I haven't updated it in a little while, but there's some helpful tips on there on how to spice up your brand on LinkedIn, but also from a networking event perspective, whether that be virtual or in person. So that's one resource. Another thing that I have found very useful is following people that you love and respect on LinkedIn. So if we're thinking of like purely branding from a professional perspective, I would advise you to go and seek out those people in LinkedIn that you respect and that are just smart people that put out things that you're interested in. Follow them and honestly just study their LinkedIn, study what they're posting. One of the things that I did for myself when I found out that I needed a LinkedIn, I think I was a sophomore in college, and I didn't have a LinkedIn. I didn't even know what an internship was. And one of my good friends, she was a PR student, and she told me like, hey, you need to get a LinkedIn like right now. And so something that I did to make it look nice was I went and I looked up key leaders at San Jose State and in industries that I was interested in, and looked at how they set up their LinkedIn, How are they setting up their brand? What are they writing about? What articles have they published? Which posts are they liking? How are they commenting on other people's posts that they're uploading on LinkedIn? So I would say there's a lot of research involved with developing your brand, but it also entails just getting to know yourself a little bit better. What do you value? What industries are you interested in? What nonprofit organizations are close to your heart, and really use that to guide the direction of how you brand yourself online. Because at the end of the day, you want to show people how awesome you are. You want to show people what you care about, because a lot of the relationship building also comes from connecting on things, on shared interests and values. So do some digging, research, and find those people that you'd like to be like someday, or and use that to think about how you might create your brand online on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever other platform you're using.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. I also want to reiterate for everyone else who is here, if you do have any questions, the students that are present, a couple of you have already been sending them in the chat, which is great. So go ahead and just send any of the questions you may have, and we will try to get through those and work them out as best as we can, considering our time. But the next question will be for Lloyd. So the question for you is, what is your advice for narrowing down a role to pursue if students are unsure what they want to do?
Well, for me, I tried out a lot of internships. I put on a lot of hats. So really, I think one of the first things is just get out there and try do things that you're interested in. I know that, and when I was in undergrad, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I had some kind of idea, and I think just going back to getting to know yourself, and first off knowing what you want to do. I knew I wanted to write. I just didn't know where and how I would apply that. Um, I think one of the first internships well, the first jobs after college I took, I was writing about women's products, which I had no idea how to write about. I actually had to, um, it was a marketing job where I had to impersonate two 30-year-old, like mid-30s moms, and just review products and make it look like I was writing a blog as a 30-year-old mom, which I have no idea to do, but it was an experience. It got me out of my comfort zone, and got me thinking about what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. Um, and even right now in my industry, where I'm working as a journalist, I started off writing about uh, just random things until I really found my niche in local news and local politics. So yeah, just trying out different hats and see what fits.
Awesome. And college is definitely the time to do that, since there's so many clubs and organizations that are available to you, especially on campus through different resources. I know they've mentioned Braven a couple of times, which I've heard is a really great, opportunity to be a part of. So take advantage of all of the options and resources that you have. So thank you for that. The next question will be for Dr. Sean Fletcher. So the question is, what additional digital tools or platforms do you recommend for students to network and showcase their work, skills, and brand? So any additional advice to that?
Interesting. I would suggest, and again, this goes back to, not to belabor the point, but it goes back to your branding strategy. One size doesn't really fit all. We've talked about LinkedIn, and Crystal mentioned a couple of other resources that allows for sort of general business networking. But again, I encourage you to assess your personal pursuit, because yours is not your tools are not going to look like mine in PR or mine within social advocacy. It won't, the sites won't even be the same. So if you're a creative, again, you might be on Vimeo. You might be producing your videos and putting them on Vimeo. If you're a designer, you might be locked into Adobe and many of their communities that they have. And quick plug, we also have a partnership with Adobe here on our campus that our advertising folks work heavily within. I would say more so than some of the generic examples would be very specific about what works for your industry. And just an add-on to the branding conversation is consistency is an important part of branding as well. When I was in the corporate world, part of my job was to take a step back and look at the consistency of how were we presenting ourselves across the different platforms. And I was the branding police to an extent. I would knock on somebody's door and say, nope, that's not how we put our logo out there. Or no, that's not our APA style guide. Or no, that's not how we look even, quite honestly. Well, that was different than when I was at Audi of America. The branding was different. So it's more so about tailoring it to your specific career pursuits and knowing what your specific outlets are. For PR, again, it's going to be a lot of some of the more larger networks. Twitter is huge for PR professionals because we're all on there, because we're looking for news releases, we're looking for media alerts, we're looking for updates, and digital media is now taking the place of the AP Newswire and some of the other newswires. So for us, we need to have a presence on Twitter, not the little generic egg profile picture. You need to have a fully robust profile that shows who you are and your representation to engage and direct message, and a number of ways that I've reached out to certain people that have allowed me to forge relationships. The same with moving on to less Instagram and less Facebook, but Facebook is growing as well. Because a lot of and again, I'm going to speak PR, a lot of our constituents and stakeholders are on Facebook as well. They have professional Facebook pages. So they reach out to me on Facebook. And that's another way that you have to really tailor it to what it is that you do. But I talk with a lot of students who are in the creative space, and the tools that work for me don't work for them. All right. And to a point that Crystal mentioned, I talked with one of our design students and he asked me about LinkedIn, and I was proud to see that he started to actually leverage some of those tools. He started to publish some of his thought pieces, not just pushing his work. He leveraged and published his thought pieces on design techniques. So it showed that he studied. It showed that he was on the cutting edge of his industry that he does not have a job in yet, but he wants a job. And he leveraged the tool in a way that engaged professionals to start a dialogue in a professional sense, not just clickbait to like something. So that was the beauty of leveraging the tools that you have at your disposal. And again, don't outthink yourselves and put your information on a less used platform. You want to put your information and tailor it where people are, where employers are, not obscure platforms that they aren't there yet. All right. When I was coming around, monster.com was huge. Well, if you try to go do that now, you'd be missing out on a significant opportunity because people aren't there really. So I would suggest, again, being very specific to your domain, your industry, what you're looking to go and do, and where are those people going to see it. And it's still, you believe it or not, it's still going to be some of the more popular websites that are out there, like LinkedIn, like Twitter. So a lot of my design folks, Instagram, because that is a heavily visual laden website. And to a lesser extent, it'll be Facebook, but tailor it to your own needs.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That was so great and informative. So we all appreciate it. We are getting close on time, so we're going to try to, I guess, get down to the last couple of questions that we have. So Lloyd, this one is from you. It's from a PR major. So they said, as a PR major interested in content marketing and content writing, what skill sets should I be practicing in my free time? Are there any online resources you'd recommend for learning more? And lastly, what sort of entry jobs should I reasonably expect?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I guess I use the analogy like if when athletes want to get good at a sport, like a football player wants or a basketball player wants to perfect the jump shot, they study tape, you know, and I get in my industry when I was starting off in journalism and content creation, the way I studied tape was to read, read about what what writing styles were out there. Pretty much read anything like uh, everything from books to news releases to press releases to really see how uh, people in the industry are doing it. And just like any athlete, you got to watch a tape to see how everybody else is playing in the game. And I guess that skill really helped me uh, develop my writing style and led me to refining what my brand was and how I wrote. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. That is all the time we have for the student Q&A portion. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Sandy so she can wrap this all up for us. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your facilitation and moderation, Sandra and Jackie. And wow, I honestly really enjoyed listening to everyone's responses from, tackling information about the self and realizing, extroversion. I'm like an ambivert versus introversion, as well as, different career tips and how to explore ways to build on like our skills and our careers. That was such incredible information. Can't wait to send the recording to y'all and can't wait to share it with other students as well. So to wrap up our time together, I just want to share a few resources and departments with you all. And so thank you very much to everyone who has helped make this event possible, from our alumni to our wonderful audience to the staff members behind this. So 3 departments I'd like to share with you today. The first is the H&A Student Success Center, where I currently work at. For folks who aren't aware, we are the primary advising center for all humanities and the arts students in regards to GE and university requirements. So if there's anybody out there who's still looking to, figure out your course schedule for spring 21, or you're trying to figure out what GEs you have left, definitely drop by our website and check out the different services that we have. From virtual front desk to group advising, we have quite a few to offer. Next slide, please. And the next department I'd like to introduce to you all is the Career Center. So I know there have been several fabulous folks putting down different resources like Handshake, the internship guide. So definitely take a look at the chat. And if you're interested in scheduling an appointment with a career counselor to talk about, what you want to do with your career, what can I do with my major, or, just getting tips on, how can I better prepare for my interviews, or taking a look at your resume, definitely check out Spartan Connect, EAB. That's how you schedule your appointment. Handshake, I believe, was mentioned. So if you're interested in checking out awesome career events such as this, and to check out jobs and internship opportunities, Handshake is a platform for our SJSU students. So definitely check that out. Next slide. And last but not least, we have the Chicanx and Latinx Success Center, also known as Centro. So Centro is a resource center with intentional program for Chicanx and Latinx community and students. So think of it as kind of like a one-stop shop, from being able to meet professors, to being able to meet your peers, to being able to meet advisors from all over campus, with an academic advising, counseling, you name it. This is kind of the hub for students. So definitely check that out. The website, email, as well as social media are listed. And so a big thank you to everyone who's helped make this possible. But one last thing, small request that I'd like to ask you all is on the next slide. And so we do have a quick survey that is being linked in the Zoom chat. And so if you have, 5 minutes to spare, please go ahead and, check out this link. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know how you're doing, because we want to make sure that we're providing intentional programming that benefits you and that works for you. So do let us know. One last slide for you, and you're going to hear me say it over and over again. Thank you. Thank you again to our alumni for sharing your stories, for sharing your wisdom and advice. Thank you to our audience for being here. Thank you to the incredible team for making this possible. And I hope you have a wonderful, not Thursday, but Friday's Eve. So I know you'll always hear me saying that. So I hope you take care, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and